All right, so I'm just going to demonstrate how to use the Cisco packet tracer, and then also how to navigate between the various Cisco iOS modes. By iOS, I'm talking of the Internet Working Operating System, which is the operating system which runs on various network devices like routers and switches. It's just similar to an operating system which runs on a desktop computer, except that it comes with network capabilities within it. So if you look at your packet tracer, this is the interface of your Cisco packet tracer. Then if you look on the bottom left corner where my cursor is, the first icon is saying network devices. So on the bottom, you can actually see the various types of network devices. Like the first one is a router. So if I click on the router, you actually see different models of routers. Like we've got 4331, 4321, 1941, and so on. These are different models of routers. If I click the next device, which is a switch, you actually see different models of switches. Like we've got the 2960, we've got the 3560, 3650, and so on. These are different models of switches. If I click the next icon, it's a hub. These are different types of hubs. The next one, you actually see different types of wireless access points and so on. So this is where you get your network devices. And then the next, if I move to the top row, where it says end devices, if I click there, these are different end devices that you can use when you are trying to build your network. Like we have PC, laptops, server, VoIP phone. You can also have a TV, a tablet, and so on. These are different end devices that you can use. Then the next icon, which looks like a phone which is charging, if I click there, it shows the various types of connections. Remember, our network devices are supposed to be joined together using different types of transmission media. So I think the most common ones that you guys are supposed to know, we have got this red, this black solid line. It represents a copper straight-through cable. So a copper straight-through cable is normally used to join a PC to a switch. It's also used to connect a switch to a router. And then also have got this dotted one, the dotted black. It represents a copper crossover cable, which is used to connect devices of the same type. Like if you want to connect a switch to a switch, sometimes a router to a router, depending with the types of routers and so on, right? And then I'll move on to the red ones, the one that looks like a phone which is charging. There are two types. We have got a serial DTE and then a serial DCE. So normally these ones are used for wide area network connections. If you want to connect devices or routers over a long distance, then we use a serial cable. So the difference between serial DCE and serial DTE is that serial DCE, you are supposed to configure it with a clock rate to provide synchronization between that link. All right, so I'm going to demonstrate as we add. So in this case, I want to add two switches. So I'm going to click where it says network devices. And then I'm going to choose switches. And then in this case, I'm going to be using 2960. So I've added my first switch there, and then I've added my second switch. So if you look, Cisco takes 0 as the first number. So the first switch is going to be given a default name, switch 0, which is a display name. So I want to change that name to switch 1. So I just double click there, edit it, and put S1. I'll double click the second one there, change it to S2. Right. So what I now want to do is I now want to put a cable. So I want to connect a switch to a switch. So I'm going to use a copper crossover cable. So I'm going to click it there, left click, and then I want to connect maybe on Giga Ethernet 0/1. And then the other switch, I'm going to choose Giga Ethernet 0/1. Okay, maybe in terms of interfaces, some of you are not familiar with it. If you are looking at a 2960 switch, it has got 26 ports. 24 of them are fast Ethernet ports. So they range from fast Ethernet 0/1 up to fast Ethernet 0/24. Then it has got 2 Giga Ethernet interfaces, which are Giga Ethernet 0/1 and Giga Ethernet 0/2. So these are the interfaces which are found on the 2960 switch. So it means you can connect a maximum of about, you've got a maximum of 28 ports. So you can connect maybe a maximum of 24 devices, and then the Giga Ethernet interfaces, you can use them as uplinks. So if I'm talking of an uplink, it's a cable that connects to another switch, right? So now moving on, right? I'm going to left click my switch, and then if I left click it, it displays this pop-up screen, and then I'm going to choose where it says CLI. CLI means command line interface. So we are going to be configuring these devices using a command line interface. We are going to be interacting by typing some set of commands. Right, so this is the first mode that you get into when you connect to a switch or to any Cisco device. This mode is called a user exec mode, and it will be displaying the host name, and then it puts a greater than sign. So this switch has not been configured before, so it is displaying a default name, which is switch. So if it is a router, it displays the default name, which is router. If it is a hub, it displays the default name, which is hub. So in this case now, this mode, which we are calling the user exec mode, is limited in terms of functionality. There isn't much that you can do when you are in this mode. So how do you move from the first mode to the second mode, which we call the which you call the privilege mode, right? You type the command enable. So if you type enable, you can actually see that the prompt has changed. It's now saying switch, and then it's put a pound sign. So the privilege mode, you can actually run more commands in the privilege mode compared to user exec mode. But your privilege mode, you cannot do configurations when you're in that mode. So normally the privilege mode is used for monitoring and troubleshooting. So like if you have done your configurations and want to check or verify the configurations that you have done, or show commands are done in the privilege mode, like show IP route, it displays your routing table. Show MAC address table, it displays the MAC address table. There are plenty of those, like show running config, it displays all configurations that you have done on that device. Then lastly, we've got what we call a global configuration mode, which is the last mode, and it's used for doing configuration. So to move from privilege mode to global configuration mode, you type the command config T and then you press enter. So you can actually see that I'm now in the global configuration mode, which is the mode that we use to do some configurations. Right, so I think I've just demonstrated how to do how to navigate between the Cisco iOS. Now that I'm in the global config mode, how do I return back to the privilege mode? If I type exit, exit will take you one step back. So if I press exit, you can actually see that I'm now in privilege mode. If I type exit again, it takes me to the first mode, which is the user exec. So exit takes you one step back. So the Cisco iOS designed in such a way that it is hierarchical in terms of design. And you cannot move from the first mode, which is the user exec mode, directly to global mode. You have to pass through the privilege mode. So I'm going to be demonstrating what we call basic settings, which are supposed to be configured on each and every device which is on the network. So if I type enable there, I'm now in privilege mode. I'm going to say config T because I want to move to global config. Now the first thing is where I'm supposed to assign a name to a device so that I'll be able to identify and locate the name, the device over the network. So like we can have several switches on the network, but there has to be some naming so that I'll be able to identify, to say this is the switch on the first floor, this is the switch on the second floor, this is the switch on the third floor, and so on. So we call it a host name. So if I want to give this switch a name, I'll type the command host name followed by the name of the switch that I want to assign. So I'm going to say switch dash and then maybe say floor dash 1, just to give it an example. You can actually see that my prompt has changed. It's now switch dash floor dash 1, which means I have signed a host name. Then number 2, we are supposed to disable what we call DNS domain lookup, so that when you make a typographical mistake, the iOS will not try to attempt to translate a domain name to an IP address. So the command to disable that is no IP domain, then dash lookup. So domain and lookup is one word like this. So if I press enter, it's giving me an error because I left an I on domain. It's supposed to be like this, domain lookup. If I press enter, it's not correct. So I've disabled domain no lookup. And then the other thing is I'm supposed to configure what we call a banner, which is a message which tells if there's an intruder that unauthorized access is not allowed. So to configure a banner, I'll write the command banner, then I say motd, then I put some double quotes and I put the message there that says unauthorized access prohibited, like this. Then if I press enter, I've configured a banner there. Then the next thing is I'm supposed to secure the console port. Like if you're configuring these devices, we normally use what we call a console port. You connect a special cable called a console cable. So you're supposed to secure it with a password so that whoever comes with their console cable, before they start to get access to configure the device, they are supposed to type for a password. So since we have got one port, the command is line console and then I say 0. Remember, Cisco takes 0 as the first number and we only have got one port. So it's line console 0. You can actually see the prompt is now saying config dash line, which means I'm now inside line console 0. And then in order to assign a password, I'll say password. And then in this case, let me just use the password data. So data is my password. After assigning a password, I need to activate the password by typing the command log in. So in this case, I've activated the password. So I can type exit so that I get out of that config line. Then the next thing, you are also supposed to configure what we call virtual terminal lines. So virtual terminal lines are used normally when you are remotely connecting to a device over the network. Let's say I want to configure a router or a switch which is in Bulawayo whilst I'm in Harare. For as long as there is an active interface on that switch or router, I can remotely connect to it over the network using Telnet or SSH. Right, so Telnet and SSH are protocols which are used for remote connection. So what I will do is I will say line VTY. Now this is a 2960 switch. It has got 5 virtual terminal lines which ranges from 0 to 4. So I'll say line VTY to say and specify the range to say from 0 to 4. If I press enter, you can actually see that I have got config line, and then I can say password, and then I will say data, and then after assigning a password, I activate it. Right, so I have assigned a password data to my virtual terminal lines. Then the next thing is I want to secure my privilege mode with a password so that whenever I move from the first mode, which is the user exec, into privilege mode, I do not go there directly. The device is supposed to prompt me to put a password. So the command to do that is enable, and then I will say secret, and then I want to put a password. Let me just put the password into password. What it then means is the word secret means if I say show run, that password is not going to be displayed as plain text, but it's going to be displayed encrypted. So if I say enable secret class, it means I have secured my privilege mode. Then the last thing is I just want to show you how to save. So saving can be done depending with the mode that you are. So if you're in this mode, which is the global mode, if you want to save, you simply write the command which you do write, right? But let's say maybe you're in the privilege mode, like this one. If you want to save, you can say copy running config startup config, like this. You press enter and then you press enter again. Once it displays that statement to say building configuration, it means you have saved. So that's what this command again can be shortened by simply saying copy run space start. The iOS understands that run is short for running config and start is short for startup config. So basically this is what you do. So if I say like this, I have saved. So what I want to do now is I am going to say exit, and I'm now in the first mode, which is the use exec. So if I press my, I'm actually out of the console. So if I press enter, you can actually see that it's now displaying the banner. It's saying unauthorized access prohibited. It is asking me to put a password. So in this case, I have to put the password data, which is the password we have used to secure our line console. But when you type the password, it does not display for security reasons. So if I press enter, you can actually see that I'm in the first mode. Now if I type enable, which is a command that takes me to privilege mode, you can actually see that it's asking for a password. And then the password we have used is what? This password. So I'm going to type password, and then you can actually see that I'm now in the privilege mode. Now if I say show run, which is a command which displays all the configurations that I have done, you can actually see that where it says secret, I cannot read. I have said enable secret and then password. Password is the password that I have used to secure, but it's not being displayed in plain text, but it's being displayed in what we call a ciphertext for security reasons. And then more, it means there are more commands to be displayed. So what I will do is I will press the space bar. It moves one page up. So I've got these interfaces which are not configured. Right, and then you can actually see if I move to the bottom, you can actually see that I've configured a banner is there. I've also configured my line console with the password data. I've also configured my line VTY with password data. But normally it's not recommended to display passwords in plain text. Normally it's recommended to encrypt all passwords. So what I'll do is I'll go back to the global config mode, right? And then there's a command that you use, service, and then you say password encryption. It's a command that encrypts all passwords that you have inputted, including future passwords that you are going to add. So if I say service password encryption like this and press enter, and then if I say do write to save the commands, right? If I then say, let me go to privilege mode. If I say show run, which is short for show running config, I want to go to the bottom. You can actually see that the password for the console and the password for the virtual terminal lines are no longer in plain text. So I have encrypted all passwords. So in this case, I've just demonstrated how to use the Cisco iOS, and then I've also demonstrated how to configure the general basic settings using the Cisco iOS. So I think thank you very much, and then I'm going to make another episode on VLANs.